And there's only one difference, and I'd say this summarizes the difference between Ethereum and BitShares, and that is you have to have stakeholder approval to enable your smart contract in BitShares. Whereas Ethereum, you can do any contract you want at any time without asking anyone's permission. So the analogy I've thrown around is BitShares is like the Apple App Store, where we add new features to it over time, but they're all curated and of relatively high quality. And Ethereum is the Android App Store, where quality and low quality exist at the same time, but all kinds of variations of things out there.
Welcome to this week's BitShares Dev Hangout. This recording is brought to you by the Beyond Bitcoin crew. We welcome all BitShares members to join us weekly and discuss the latest news, updates, and developments. If you'd like to participate in our next meeting, then please join us live on Mumble every Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Did you know the Beyond Bitcoin show now has a registered delegate? Please consider voting if you find our Hangouts and recordings useful. The delegate name to vote for is fuzzy.beyondbitcoin. Again, that's fuzzy.beyondbitcoin. The Beyond Bitcoin crew would like to send out a big thank you to everyone who's already voted and allowing us the opportunity to serve the BitShares ecosystem and our valued community members. So once again, welcome and please enjoy the show.
Welcome everybody to another Beyond Bitcoin Hangout. Today is Friday, July 31st, 2015. We're talking again with Bytemaster of Cryptonomics, the chief engineer of BitShares, and bringing the community together to listen to project updates and to ask questions. So with that said, I will go ahead and pass the torch on to you, Bytemaster. Give us any updates that you feel are pertinent or interesting that you'd like to let us know about, and then we can move on to the community.
Sure. First of all, I'd like to apologize for not getting the testnet out this week. We had several of our guys out sick Monday and Tuesday, and that kind of set us back. But all of the blockchain level things that were preventing us from launching a testnet have been resolved. So we will be launching a testnet. I've said this every week for the past several weeks, but this time I mean it. That will allow witnesses to get on board. Xerox has been publishing how-tos to walk witnesses through the process of importing their stake and getting voted in and starting producing blocks. So now that we've got instructions available, we can start doing tests at that level. So this would be a testnet for witnesses only. This would not be a testnet for regular users because the web interface is still not at a level that I'm comfortable with the public testing. So a lot of people have said that I need to stop focusing on the back end and start focusing on the front end. This week, I decided to dig into React.js and start learning how all the web interface stuff works. And that's been very productive. So I am now working full-time, more or less, on the web interface and making sure that all that works well with the back end. This has been relatively productive because I know both sides and can fix things and or improve things to make front-end development easier. So that's what I'm doing, and the other guys are preparing for the testnet. That's all the updates this week. We've just been plugging away at the code, as you can see by our GitHub commits.
Well, the testnet has been something that I distinctly recall you've always said, I want it to be ready by this time, but you've never exactly promised it. I think we've learned that.
That's not exactly up to me. Yeah, it's not exactly up to me. I'm kind of depending upon the other members of the team, and they're all working as hard as they can. There's a lot of desire to accuse us of being slow, but I can tell you that the guys are working hard and they're addressing things as quickly as they can. If there was a way to accelerate it, trust me, I'm the first person who'd want to do it. So if we can't throw more people at it and we can't throw more money at it, the only thing we can throw at it is more time. And so that's what we're doing. But overall, we are writing test cases for the last little odds and ends. That's what Ben's doing to make sure that all those things are properly tested. But we've got the vast majority of the blockchain infrastructure tested, which is really good. And it's tested much more thoroughly than anything we've had in prior BitShares releases. So yes, this is taking longer than we wanted for the testnet, but I think that we're finally at a point where we can start getting some test nodes out there and getting wider community involvement in testing the infrastructure. In the meantime, I'm working on the front end to make sure that we can get all of that stuff polished and usable. And there is an unbelievable amount of work there to make that easy. So I doubt anything's going to happen over the weekend. I guess one thing that happened this week, it seems so long ago, but even though it was just Monday or Tuesday, Eddie Corral from BitShares Music came and visited us here in Blacksburg this week. That's another reason why I wasn't available to work on testnet stuff, because I was in meetings with him most of that time. Those are very productive meetings, and he's going to be helping us, and we're going to be helping him. So we've got a really solid relationship with the music folk. And I'm really excited about what they have coming down the pipe.
I hate to interrupt you, but at this point, I would ask, can you get into any details as far as what the benefits of this alliance are? Like what mutual agreements have come forth from the meeting, anything like that?
Eddie's going to be helping us raise money for Cryptonomics and generate business for Cryptonomics, and we are going to be taking over the development of BitShares music stuff. So
gotcha.
It's
so they're wanting 2.0.
They're going to be 2.0 on Graphene, and basically almost one project.
It sounds to me like this is kind of the path that was going to end up being taken. But I do have a question. Do you guys have a similar relationship with Play? Do you guys talk to them at all?
We haven't been in communication with Play as much. We have talked to them. They have expressed interest in using Graphene. And so we're just working out the details with them there.
Riverhead has a question. Please ask
it. With music before, they were planning to do their own blockchain, and I know they had planned to go to 2.0. With, you say it's combined one project, are they still planning their own blockchain but just using Graphene?
Yeah, they're still doing their own blockchain. That's not changing. They've got they did a 70% share drop on AGS PTS and 20% to their fundraiser. So they've more or less honored our community, and they're sort of grandfathered in as far as I'm concerned on the Graphene side of things. It's not going to be one project in the sense of it's going to be its own thing. It's going to be it's going to be separate from BitShares, but it's not going to compete with BitShares because of how it's being geared. It has to be regulatory friendly, and BitShares is a little bit more open. So we're working on the details there. It's basically one team that's going to be building both, and the innovations that BitShares Music or Peer Tracks is paying for is being worked into BitShares. So one of those innovations is the payment splitter, which is a smart contract that allows you to pay to an object, and that object will automatically divide the funds up among several different accounts according to basically royalty percentages and or market buybacks. So
sure,
those type of things, you can see some of that work on GitHub today. That's going to roll back into BitShares, but it was developed for Eddie and Peer Tracks. So we basically have a good partnership there. It's I think it's good for both of us.
I guess it's also a good proof of concept for Cryptonomics being able to help with creating a completely separate business using graphene.
Correct.
And also being able to implement it with the existing things that the community has built,
Correct. And we get all the branding and marketing and integration. So we're going to work on making sure that music and BitShares play well together, and they get lots of mutual benefits. So it's good. We're combining resources, and it basically means our team is stronger. We needed someone like Eddie on our team, and now that he's working with us and we're working with him, I think we're much more closer than we have been for the past year. Past year, we'd meet a couple of times, but we really forged a much closer partnership.
It'll be very interesting seeing where this goes. Have you made had any thoughts regarding other blockchains that share drop to certain levels like that? Like if there was a blockchain that came in and share dropped like that again, which I don't know if it'll ever happen again. I'm not saying anything. But if it were to happen, would these types of things be open for similar help from the Cryptonomics team?
I don't want to commit to anything in particular, but if you're trying to do anything with blockchain technology, you want to build your own blockchain, you should definitely contact us, and we'll see what we can do for you.
And how do they contact you? What is the best way?
Best way is to contact Stan at Cryptonomics.com, or through the forum as Bytemaster or Stan on BitSharesTalk.org.
I have so many questions all the time, so I'm just going to stop for a second and ask, does anybody else have any questions that they'd like to ask or comments that they'd like to make? Feel free to ask in the side channel if you don't want to ask out loud.
Do you have any more need for additional testers for your testnet on the witness level or not?
The main thing that we're going for with this first public testnet is to verify that we can do 1 second block times with nodes across the globe, as well as to push the throughput limit with as many nodes producing transactions as fast as we can get. So yes, the more nodes we can have on the network, the better the testnet will be.
All right, I'll see if I can't get a node operational and see if I can contribute. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Ken Code asks, can I run a node here in Munich running on Raspberry Pi or BeagleBone Black? Is that for real? BeagleBone Black?
Maybe that'd be a good thing to attempt. It depends on how much RAM you have and how much bandwidth you have and how hard we hit the test network. If we really spam the test network with everyone doing 140 to 500 transactions each, and you got 100 people doing that, it's going to get messy really quickly. But it'd be really nice to see how far we can push one of those Raspberry Pi.
Do you have already written a transaction generator for 2.0?
Yes. Define what you mean by generator.
We want to benchmark and push through lots of transactions. No one's going to write that by hand.
The CLI wallet has debug functions that will basically spam the network as fast as it can.
Cool, thank you.
It's an interesting side effect of the way graphene works. We run out of nuance values to make unique transactions. Because two transactions with the exact same data look the same, and therefore they would count as duplicate. We can't broadcast them within the same expiration window. So when we start to spam the network with lots of transactions, we have to subtly change every single transaction. And so that's actually one of the challenges with spamming the network, is making sure that we have enough bits that we can twiddle with every single transfer when you're doing that, particularly when you're trying to do it with a small amount of funds. Yeah.
So you run out of nonce values?
Yeah, we can add a Satoshi with every transfer. We can increment the timestamp on every transfer. So there's things like that, but there aren't actually nuances involved. So we have to twiddle other bits, such as the amount that we're transferring and the expiration date, or the TAPOS block number. So when you have one block every second and you're trying to produce 1,000 transactions in that second, and you only have second resolution on your timestamps, things start to get interesting. But yeah, we can tweak things like the Satoshi values. But when you're tweaking Satoshi values, it's kind of hard to know how everything should add up at the end, versus knowing I did 100 transfers, they're all the same size. Now you don't have to integrate and things like that. So there are things we can do. I'm not saying it's an intractable problem, but that was one of the challenges we ran into, was we're producing transactions so fast it's hard to get enough bits to differentiate them.
Sure.
So.
Well, I would also like to ask, since we've been talking about these other chains, we talked a little bit, maybe a month and a half ago, about DevShares and the idea of crazy shares. And have you guys talked at all about DevShares, what's going to happen with it?
We've been so busy just trying to get the testnet out, we haven't thought about that particular strategy at this point in time.
Sure. So you're not really talking too much with the people on the DevShares side about this?
No. Who is the people on the DevShares side?
That's a good point. Mostly BitShares.
Mostly it's the people doing the testnet. So the testnet will probably evolve into DevShares. The last testnet, or when we announced that we're ready to upgrade to 2.0, and we'll give it a 30-day notice, we'd probably also launch the testnet that becomes DevShares.
Well, that would be actually really good to launch a DevShares 2.0, do it right, and have, DevShares is supposed to be broken into, right? So
yeah,
that might be something to promote. Break DevShares, everybody. Any questions, comments before I look into the forums?
Is this when we ought to talk, or is this? I'm just listening. This is very interesting.
This is the time when I open it up for, well, when we have open community discussion. So if you have a topic or a question or a comment, please bring it up.
Yeah, I spoke with Stan the other day and was hugely inspired by what he had to say regarding the available technology to now accommodate some special types of business methods or models. And one of the things we want to do is introduce a currency among a professional society, a society of professional engineers, as something that they trade among themselves. We have far more nefarious plans for that currency, but to start off, to get people to use it and so forth, we're kind of looking at the initial dynamics of how a community would interact with community currency based on the cryptonomics or the BitShares platform.
It sounds like a version of brownie points.
Well, yes and no. We want to, there's a isolated community, and there's high barrier entry to get into it. You have to have passed examinations and so forth. So it's very well established who is a member and who isn't. So that the people inside the membership of that professional organization would have just a currency or a token that they can trade among each other. We like to call it a currency. We like to have it be on its own blockchain because in the future we're going to be developing products or features on that currency as the society grows in its usage. Yeah, brownie points are a great idea, but I'm wondering we'd like to get something more rigorous that's lightweight, so that people who aren't familiar with cryptocurrencies kind of understand it and feel comfortable with it.
Yeah, so you want to launch your own blockchain as a currency / whatever future business model you might want to implement on top of that currency.
Right, that's exactly what we want to do. And we're looking to this community to let us know what other efforts of that kind have been done and what we can learn from them.
In the past, we've had the Rand Paul coin and PTS 1.0. So those two things have spun off. I don't know of any other spin-offs, but that, of course, was all the BitShares one code base. But I think that type of discussion is a good thing to have. I think the community want to know, how is it going to be different from what BitShares is offering, and what things is it going to do that BitShares doesn't do or can't do, and is there anything that BitShares does that you're not going to do? So trying to understand the different roles in the market, and obviously everyone's interested in growing network effect. We certainly want to have n squared and not 2n, because it's just a lot more value and a lot better network effect if we can do that. So it really depends on your goals and your plans, but if you're interested in doing that type of thing, we'd be more than happy to talk with you outside of Mumble and figure out what kind of arrangement makes sense.
This is a place where I think that the 2N versus N2 discussion, something that I've been thinking a lot about myself, is the partnerships that we can form that will form synergistic effects. And what I mean by that is it'll create more value for both sides, as opposed to dividing focus and market share and the network effect. If you can utilize both platforms in a way that they specialize in different areas, or they fill certain jurisdictions or different niches in the market, then you're creating an entire DPoS based economy, and the exchange will be a huge part of it. But and an integral part of it, but it won't be the only part of it. So I really look forward to hearing more. I mean, can you talk a little bit more about it in Genesis? Or is it something?
No, absolutely. I just didn't want to. I just want to overweigh this discussion with our gory little details. I was just kind of looking for. So this would not. What we're doing would not be on the BitShares network. It could not. It would be a completely different blockchain, which is similar to BitShares in terms of proof of stake instead of proof of work and so forth.
So it would be more like proof of stake, or proof of stake or delegated proof of stake will be the difference. But yeah, I guess, I mean, we can talk about it here, or if Bytemaster would like to talk about it off, after the hangout, that's fine too.
Yeah, let's talk about specific projects like that. Contact us, and we'll set up a Skype meeting or something to discuss it in greater detail, and we'll go from there. What other general BitShares related questions do we have?
Does anybody have any questions that they would like to bring up at this point in time? Well, I will say this: Cylon Maker isn't asking a question, but he says here that he is interested in issuing membership tokens for his school's crypto club. It'd be great to use BTS user-issued assets. I'd like to limit trade to actual members as well as voting. Well, that can all be done from the BitShares blockchain, can't it?
It can be done from the Graphene blockchain much easier. So
Gotcha.
You can whitelist it, and you can restrict all trades to be between the issuer and the owner. So those are two types of things. So I think that would be a great application as far as voting. If you're doing stake-weighted voting, that's something that Nathan is looking at helping Follow My Vote with. And it's also something that the music guys are interested in. So there's a lot of interest in stake-weighted voting. So you should probably expect to see something like that in the future. We don't have it today, but it is a higher priority.
Well, speaking of him, Adam K. Ernest, there's been some news in the BitShares community kind of floating around about him lately with a meeting that he had, and maybe some other things that were going on. Do you feel like you can talk a little bit to that?
I can say a little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit that you can.
Which meeting are you referring to?
Okay, you're gonna make me do it this way. Okay, it was the one where there's a digital country, or what's it called?
Liberland?
Liberland, yes.
Or something like that.
The president of Liberland. Whenever I saw this, I wanted to ask you guys about it, but this is the best place to do it.
Adam is now the official representative to Liberland of Virginia. So I believe
Nice.
he's Virginia at Liberland or whatever. He's got that email address. His relationship there is strong. I think that's about all I can say about it.
No problem. So is he living out at Thomas Jefferson's manor and now wearing a quill hat and walking around?
Now that's not too far from here.
Oh, sorry. Okay, sorry guys. We got to get back to business. My apologies for going off topic. So Bytemaster, I'm going to go ahead and dig into some of these forum questions because one of them, the first one, is mine. So I'm going to ask that. Are there any projects in the crypto ecosystem that you feel would form powerful partnerships with BitShares that you've seen that you think would be interesting for us to reach out to? And if so, if you have more than one of them, which one would be the most prioritized?
Partnerships are a funny thing. It's kind of like dating. When you're in a relationship where you're happy being single, it doesn't matter how great a relationship might be, you're not interested. So it seems like a lot of crypto communities, there are things that would be great if we could get along, but we all have our own goals and directions and philosophies, and we've all got our own stakeholders. And I think that's the biggest thing that's preventing partnerships between crypto communities. It really depends on what such a partnership would look like. So, if you look at Ethereum, they've got a blockchain now. But what would we partner with them to do? They've got slightly different philosophy than we have. They've got different stakeholders that they're not going to switch to graphene, and we're certainly not going to switch to their technology. Most of the partnerships would be in the businesses that surround the blockchain. The technology is so vastly different. It's like apples and oranges. It's Windows and Mac.
Sure.
So, we're all contributing to the general idea space of cryptocurrencies. So, no, Ethereum does not have 115K transactions per second.
Good job bringing that one up, 5D. Well played, big smiley face boy.
I have noticed that there's an awful lot of people coming out with 100K per second transaction statements in the crypto space now.
Yeah, we kind of set the bar, didn't we?
I'd say so.
Yeah, isn't it good that we set it lower so that we can easily up it?
Very good.
Well, now it's 150.
So,
but this brings up a good point, though. How many times do you see that? That's one thing that I have to give everybody is this system for referrals will definitely give a great incentive for people to use these talking points that are truly innovative aspects of BitShares, and give them a reason to bring it out, so you guys get what you deserve, the respect that you deserve from it. And I understand that that's not why you guys do all this, but when you are the person who came up with something, I mean, I imagine how Tesla would feel, sometime, or how he felt. I mean, these things do happen, somebody comes out with, oh, this is the best thing ever, but then you look at the solution and it's centralized, right? So this is still the most innovative, at least in terms of what it can push through in the scalability in the crypto ecosystem. So, but anyway, the reason why I brought that question up is because Quora is a chain that is doing something for blogging, and they basically have, I'm not an expert, of course, in it. I've just been reading up on it as of late and talked to them and had a hangout recently. And they were talking about integrating with BitShares. And I saw that as a great opportunity to show them firsthand, when they start integrating with it, they're going to become more intimate with how BitShares works, and they're going to understand what it's capable of. So these are the types of things that I'm thinking about, and I just kind of wanted to get your take on, because generally I assume that you've thought about a lot of the things that I've already thought about. When I think that I've come up with something out of the blue that is intelligent, generally somebody has probably thought of it first, right? So I kind of assume that you probably have. So have you thought about any of these types of things, like projects like blogging and crypto integration and all that good stuff, straight from the blockchain, and
yes,
connecting
I've
it up?
thought about it. it's something that I think has some real potential. But there's only so many things I can focus on. So as much as I'd love to dive in and tackle that problem, and it'd be really fascinating to get that resolved.
Sure.
My number one concern in everything is profitability. I've got to get to self-sustaining profitability as soon as possible, so that I don't have to worry about how we're going to pay everyone.
Sure.
We can't live on investor money forever.
Well, and this is one of those places where the community and projects like Genesis, I think will be very valuable for that, because they want to create something called bid pool off of it. And I can't get too deep into everything. Dan would talk about that, but all this stuff is out in the open. He's already talked about it. He has speeches. He asks people to watch the video before he talks to them. So I can say that it's going to be like a decentralized platform for, and it's going to mask the identities essentially, to at least to a degree, and provide privacy. And it's going to essentially create a smart system, a dynamic system for the worker proposals that we're going to need. So these are things that, I have a list of priorities thread on the forums. This is a time that I'd like to point everybody there. So anyway, with that said, do you mind if I move on to a couple more questions?
Go ahead.
Can I comment really quick?
Of course.
Well, what we're trying to do is, we're looking for a blockchain upon which to build other features, and the reason for that is to bridge the gap between the virtual and the physical. And so the blockchain, the currency I was talking about earlier was for engineers, professional engineers, and these web guys and girls are the ones who are basically responsible for basic infrastructure, roads, bridges, highways, and so forth. So a coin traded among them would have intrinsic value. So at first we want to start with a simple sort of, here's a token everybody can share. But then, that token being shared among engineers represents the productivity of those engineers and therefore has intrinsic value. And what we would do next is incorporate these other features, such as bid pool, which converts a lot of cash that's going to bidding into a decentralized process, decentralizes bidding on almost anything. So procurement would become decentralized. And then something else called curiosity, which would allow the network to find each other with a lot more efficiency. So, but these are all things that we want to marry to a blockchain. So I'm not really certain how. I'm just sort of touching on BitShares. BitShares seems like the type of blockchain that would facilitate or accommodate these future plans, and I think that's what Fuzzy is getting to. We're not competing, but we need a blockchain. And we're going to use it in interesting ways.
Yeah, there's a lot of really interesting applications there. Essentially, any business that has a ledger or a database, basically any database where you're using private keys as permissions for modification of the database, that is all a blockchain is. So take any business out there, procurement, auctions, any of these things, you can implement it inside the BitShares system. And what's really nice about Graphene is we've abstracted a lot of the complexities of the database side of things, such as handling forks, rolling back, making sure things are high performance. And we've boiled it down to you define the tables you need, which are just objects, and you define the operations. It allows us to implement new features very quickly. And in fact, the complexity of implementing a new feature on top of graphene is similar to the complexity of implementing a custom smart contract on Ethereum. And there's only one difference, and I'd say this summarizes the difference between Ethereum and BitShares, and that is you have to have stakeholder approval to enable your smart contract in BitShares. Whereas Ethereum, you can do any contract you want at any time without asking anyone's permission. So the analogy I've thrown around is BitShares is like the Apple App Store, where we add new features to it over time, but they're all curated and of relatively high quality. And Ethereum is the Android App Store, where quality and low quality exist at the same time, but all kinds of variations of things out there. So there's good and bad approaches because we can compile down to the actual hardware with assembly, compiled stuff versus interpreted stuff. We get all the performance. It's kind of like developing apps for iOS. It's compiled, more energy efficient, and all those benefits versus Android apps, which are Java and slightly slower, heavier weight. So there's analogies that can be made there. It's not a perfect analogy, but that's how I like to think about it. The only downside is that all nodes on the network need to update whenever a new smart contract is rolled out, versus like Ethereum, they don't have to update, and that's the difference. But with how we're designing wallets to be mostly hosted wallets, service providers will just upgrade every time a new feature set is ready and the stakeholders vote to enable it. So most users don't actually have to upgrade. They just get new features and new capabilities as the blockchain supports it. And those who are hosting the servers, they've got all the incentive financially to upgrade and keep things updated in a timely fashion. But everyone's sort of looking over everyone else's shoulder, making sure all the contracts play well together, are properly generic and flexible. And I think that's going to make for a very powerful, well-integrated system as we move forward, even though it doesn't give us the free-for-all. That said, nothing prevents a future feature from enabling general-purpose scripting, just like Ethereum has. So that's where we are.
So that kind of leads us. We're kind of contemplating on, do we need? We benefit from the N squared as well. So we're just wondering, can we do everything we want to do on a BitShares network with the BitShares blockchain, or do we need to create our own?
If assuming all the features you want to implement are generally applicable to, and don't add extra restrictions like regulatory requirements, but if it's open, free for all, then yes, you could probably do it on the BitShares blockchain, because the BitShares stakeholders, they want to add new features as fast as we can develop them and have them be stable. And there's, if we keep adding these features, everything you want to do makes a whole lot of sense to integrate into BitShares. So the only time you wouldn't want to integrate into BitShares is if you can't get stakeholder approval for a feature, or if the fees associated with doing it on the BitShares network will be higher for whatever reason. So those are the pros and cons. You put it on one network and fees go up and you have to coordinate with more people, but then you get network effect. You do it on your own network, you don't have to coordinate with as many people, you don't get as much network effect. But that's the trade-off. It's probably going to be faster to get something out the door on your own network, but it's going to be more costly to maintain your own nodes, and then you have to get exchange partners, and it's harder for your users to get in and out or interoperate with stuff that's going on BitShares. So I guess my point is we want the BitShares network to evolve with regular updates and new features, and I think things like adding auctions or fulfillment or message boards to the blockchain make a lot of sense. And they'll make sense as long as the network can generate enough revenue from transaction fees to justify the feature. So I guess
Do you
that's
see worker
where we are.
proposals for as far as the features concept that you're talking about? Do you see worker proposals as having an integral place in this? Like, for instance, let's say in Genesis is debating whether he's going to do this project off BitShares or on BitShares. What if the BitShares community decided, we would like to approach them to create a worker proposal, and maybe we can help fund them 50-50 or something to that effect, and receive a share drop of some of the tokens when they're created, or just ideas like that. Do you see things like that, a place for it?
Well, I think there's two things. One is asking for funding from the blockchain, and that's a whole level of politics. Another is you completely fund the development yourself, and you're ready to go, and you can either launch your own chain, or the BitShares network can accept your free pull request to merge the changes you want in. And so I would develop it on my own as if I was going to launch my own chain. And then once I've got it all developed and tested and documented and proven that it works, I can ask the BitShares community, hey, vote on whether or not to accept this upgrade. If BitShares accepts it, then you get the network effect and you get the feature you need. If it doesn't accept it, then you launch your own chain with it. And the BitShares network is then, and all the users have to decide, do we want a potential competitor or do we want the feature? And if the feature was not, we didn't have to pay for it, then, and it doesn't adversely impact the other users of BitShares, then there's almost no reason why we wouldn't want to integrate the feature.
So you think that that's where the money might be for people who are creating and testing these features?
But if they go their own way, they'd have to license graphene, which is an unknown cost right now, right?
Yes, but you could probably want to negotiate the terms of a potential license before you do any development. So you know that you have the option to launch your own chain, and then it's just a last-minute business decision on which way you go.
One factor that you need to take into account that we haven't mentioned yet is with the referral program and the fact that he has 40,000 members, it's very much in his best interest to get them to sign up so that he can get all the revenue from those members using the rest of the features of the BitShares network. Going his own ways, he sacrifices that.
That's part of the network effect, I guess, really, if we boil it down, but that's a very good point.
Well, we're setting this thing up to be a speculative currency, something that people will see as distinct from, specifically Bitcoin, because there's the intrinsics of most cryptocurrencies. Intrinsic value is sketchy at best, and we're making the claim that this coin stores value in public infrastructure. It's a bold claim, and it may not be accepted by many, but it could. Let's put it that way. So we're kind of setting it up that way. We'd like that to be the case with this particular currency. So we need some design parameters. We need some, So we're working on the specifics of what this coin would be, but potentially there is a fairly large amount of people who would use it.
Well, I'll say this. The project itself seemed like it had, from after talking to you, it seemed like you got a pretty good turnout for the people who were listening. And there were many people who were interested in the concepts that you were talking about. And you seemed, when you explained this entire story to me, that some of the things that you were saying, you weren't sure how well they were going to be handled and accepted, but you were pleasantly surprised. Am I correct in saying that?
Well, yeah, and again, you're dealing with they've got pain points. They're feeling the pain of lower influence. They're feeling the pain of lower membership, and all these other things. Technology competing with the old guard, let's say. So the old guard has a choice of either becoming, hiding behind bigger rocks and growing thicker armor, or to change. And so that's what this particular the president of the NSPE wants to do, is change, do something completely radical, just take a completely different step in how we organize ourselves as a profession. But you can't just shove that down people's throats. You got to kind of introduce it like a savory little biscuit that everybody can digest, and then slowly start building the pieces on that. So we need that flexibility to say, hey, here's just this little game token coin. It's like bingo. Everybody agrees that the ball is random. Everybody has a little stamp they can hit the square and trade it for a little prize. It started that way because this is going to be a skeptical audience. But then with the revenues coming off those exchanges, we would start developing some very, very powerful tools on that coin. So that's, and yes, there is reception. There is reception from that community and possibly others.
Well, this is a good point in time to ask the question that T-Bone NYC asks here. And this is open for anybody, but of course, Bytemaster, you're more than welcome to answer it as well. Can we ensure network effect either way? In other words, can custom graphene implementation somehow be required to have BTS as the central currency so that BTS still gets the network effect, even though they are building their own functionality on their own blockchain?
It's possible for one blockchain to consider the state of another blockchain as part of its state, basically observing that chain, as long as it doesn't need to control information on that chain. And in fact, the BitShares /Graphene supports a custom operation, which allows you to basically publish anything you want to the BitShares network, as long as you pay a data fee. That allows you to build things like message boards without having to ask anyone's permission. You can build any app you want, including building your own sub protocol with its own token and its own rules, so long as you pay your transaction fees in BitShares. So from that perspective, it's very easy to build custom blockchains. You can do anything you want, leveraging the network effect of BitShares to some extent, because you're on the BitShares blockchain, but you have to pay all your fees in BitShares. It just means you won't be able to take bit assets into your own private smart contracts, because the BitShares network wouldn't know how to track assets in there. But there's nothing that says you can't do things like message boards and things like that, voting, anything that needs read-only access to the BitShares blockchain. If you issue your own tokens on your own layer, then it'd be kind of like Mastercoin sitting on top of Bitcoin. You can have those type of interactions going on. So it is possible to build those type of meta layers and arbitrary functions without having to ask permission of anyone.
Kind of like Meta Exchange does.
Not like Meta Exchange, but yeah, more like Mastercoin and Counterparty.
Oh, gotcha.
We expect to see dilution as well. If the Professional Engineering Society develops their coin, we truly expect the IEEE and the ASME and the others to do so as well. So we face dilution ourselves, and ultimately we like to integrate all engineers, not just the licensed ones, but the ones who are all the way to the to independent coders. Anybody who's developing something useful to humanity, to society, would theoretically be trading this coin among each other. So that's my view. Yeah, we can go on our own, but we're going to be integrating with future people who are going to copy us, and we want them to copy us. How do we capture the entire network eventually somehow?
Yeah, I don't have all the answers for you today, but I do think that we've got enough options available to solve what you want to solve.
Well, my thinking is specifically along the lines of, I mean, if BitShares does offer primarily everything that you need, you also have DevShares, which allows you to test it before you push it out to BitShares network. So you have that in addition to everything else. And when you're trying to bring others on board, what's the best way of doing it? To just do things, do what you're going to do, and show that it's a useful test case. And once they start realizing it, they're going to smell the cooking meat and they're going to come running, like a pack of hungry wolves to create their own. And if they find that these tools enable them to build their chains and with the specific features that they need, and gain access to all the other features that others are building, then you do kind of have that compartmentalization that might be necessary to keep certain organizations, quote unquote, separate, while at the same time allowing them to have consensus on the certain things that they're going to need, because all engineers are going to require certain things, right? Certain features.
Well, the curiosity eventually resolves to a combination of knowledge assets. So an individual would be, this several different, would tag themselves with several different characteristics. If we're just considering if each one of those characteristics were a coin, how would that integrate? So we're trying to use coins for solving other problems that may arise in the future. And I think the exchange, one thing that Stan said was really attractive was that you could put it all on an exchange, so you could see how your engineering coin is trading against a Bitcoin or something else that's out there, and that kind of sets up a game dynamic which will incent the behaviors that we want.
Well, not only that, but if you look at the current market, like BitShares, what does it accomplish? It allows you to build this and see the valuation in a market where the valuation is a true valuation. It's not a manipulated valuation, or it's at least not going to be manipulated in the ways that you see stocks of small companies manipulated to destroy them and to destroy competition, right? You see these different functionalities and the benefits that they're going to bring. But anyway, I do look forward to hearing more about this after you and Bytemaster talk in the future. Would you be willing to come on for another hangout at some point in time and talk to Bytemaster and the community after you guys have a meeting?
Sure, I'd love to. I'm here. I'm lurking. I'm learning as much as I can from this community.
Sounds good.
Great. All right, one last question.
Well, let's see here. G Chicken apparently asked a question that I missed. My apologies, G Chicken. I do not try to miss questions.
All right, so there's a question here while you're looking, Fuzzy. Can custom functionality be built onto the BitShares blockchain, but only be accessible to those that are specifically subscribed to those features? That's the entire idea behind the custom operation. Anyone who implements the support for interpreting those operations can have those features, but everyone else just has to check that the fee covers the data. So that's the way we have custom functionality right now, and it allows users to pick and choose which subset of those custom features they want to support. But you do have to get all the data on the blockchain. You just don't have to interpret or process or index or do all the complex stuff with the data. You just have to acknowledge it.
Which actually would significantly decrease the amount of money they need to put into their own IT infrastructure for that type of stuff, right?
Yes. The idea is we wanted witness nodes to be able to be as lightweight as possible, but allow other heavier weight nodes to do extra things. An example of custom functionality is the account and transaction history. By default, the witness nodes do not need to track transaction history. You can completely validate all blockchain state without keeping any records whatsoever of history beyond the fork window. But anyone who's providing a hosted wallet probably wants to have the complete history of every single account so it can provide that to its user. So those nodes will need more RAM and more resources. Other examples would be market history. The blockchain doesn't need to store market history in order to process current orders. It just needs to know the order book and the new orders that are coming in. So market history is also a optional feature. We're trying to identify, make as many things optional as possible so that if you want to run a validating node, you can do so with as little resources as possible.
Here's another question from Chris4210. I'm going to just ask this one because I cannot find G-Chicken's question. How to ignite a bit asset market. I would like to know about Cryptonomics' explanation how to start a bit asset market. I already wrote a post about it here, and he gives the link. I see limits in certain markets because there is nothing existing to be traded. BTS, gold, HKD, which I'm assuming is Hong Kong dollars. Does it need delegates to burn BTS, shorting bit assets into existence? That would be a heavy loss of business to start an asset. Looking forward to an answer.
So a bit asset, I've been thinking a lot about how bit assets work. And there's different market segments associated with them. One is speculators. The other is people that want to use it as a currency. So depending on which way you want to bootstrap it, traders are a lot easier. Currency is a lot harder. Traders don't care about actual price. They just care about relative price. And currency, they need it to be as close to pegged as possible. What bit assets allow exchanges to do, or anyone to do, is to have say you wanted to do dollars to bit USD, guaranteed 1-to-1. As long as you have enough BTS to back every dollar plus some percent, you can create your own bit asset and buy and sell it at exactly $1, and everyone knows that you have 110% reserve in BTS, and worst case scenario, you get the BTS. They're not necessarily liabilities. It's like you're insured, right? If I'm going to have $1 million float of bit USD, I've got 1.1 million worth of BTS backing it, and I'm just buying and selling bit USD for USD on my exchange, and at all times the collateral is there, and the price stability is there, and the conversion's there. But if someone comes along and they say, I want to buy 2 million bit USD, I don't have the ability to short to myself another million. So it basically allows anyone with a large bank account to issue a currency that's 110% backed, particularly if you're invested in BitShares, and then to make money off of that currency trading. So it's kind of like government regulations that require banks to have a bond, right? You have to post a bond of some percent of assets for everything that you trade. So if someone buys dollars from you and you're taking on a lot of deposits, you might have to increase your bond or your FDIC insurance to cover those losses. So that, I think, is probably going to be the way bit assets work in the future. Is an issuer will create it, they'd have lots of money they bring to the table, and they say, hey, use this as currency. but it's fully backed and it's secured. And I think that will allow you to have direct pegging 1-to-1 USD, BitUSD with some spread for the issuer, basically a conversion fee. And you don't even have to look at the BitShares USD price so much, or that market doesn't even need to be well developed, because all you're doing is you're using the BitShares as collateral to make your IOUs not so much of an IOU. They're a lot more trusted. So it's also possible, I suppose, for you to do fractional systems where you back 10% of everything you have in BitShares, so that the from a market pegged asset, it's pegged to 1/10 of a dollar, but you're buying and selling it at $1. In worst case scenario, you get 1/10 of a dollar if the issuer defaults. So it's a way for issuers to issue IOUs that are insured and that are not technically IOUs, because the blockchain will provide a minimal level of backing to them, but they'll continue to trade at $1. That's how I see
FDIC.
Yes.
Only you can't print. They can't just keep printing money.
Right. You can't keep printing it, but you can issue dollars up to however much you have. And anytime someone gives you dollars, right? So that second million comes in, I take those $1 million, I buy more BitShares, and then I issue more in there. But I need to, and as I'm making money from fees, I'm able to accumulate more BitShares, and therefore I can increase my float. And if there's all of a sudden a huge demand to move into my IOUs, then I can start charging slightly more for it, and that profit I can take to roll over into my fund to build it up. So bottom line is, it allows anyone to become a bank that is GOX proof, but otherwise the currency is perfectly pegged. But it does come at a high cost, right? No one likes to have 150% reserves for everything, right? Imagine if Bitstamp needed to have 150% of the value of all of its deposits in its bank account in order to operate. That's sort of what we're saying. So it's super secure from the user's perspective, but it has a high capital cost from the issuer's perspective. But if you view it as, well, every time a trade occurs, I'm getting 1% and everything else, then you can say, well, I'm earning 10% on my capital. That's huge. Sure. So you can get relatively high, low risk returns that way. And one of the things that's interesting is, if you short BitUSD to yourself and you sell it for USD, you end up just net long BTS. You're not leveraged. You trade BitUSD for USD, and so you still got a USD equivalent and a short USD equivalent, which turned into being just BTS. So you are exposed to BTS while you're operating in this mode. On the other hand, it's also possible to take a bid asset backed by a bid asset, in which case now you're not exposed to BTS. So there's lots of opportunities out there, and I think we've just scratched the surface on what these tools will allow to occur, and some entrepreneur will figure out how to start a business and make this all happen.
Literally just scratching the surface. It's so crazy to think after, 2 years, we're just scratching the surface. Like, that's, and it's such a new industry, and 2 years old is actually old. So we're getting to the point where we're actually talking about this stuff, which is cool. If you don't mind, I'm just gonna sneak one in, because G-Chicken has been so amazing, despite the fact that I missed him twice. Can BM expand on the shopping cart feature mentioned last mumble? Will it allow merchants to eliminate payment processors such as BitPay?
Yes.
G Chicken, did that make
Well,
you smile?
Let me rephrase that. As long as they're willing to hold their balance in BitUSD.
Well, I think that there's some secret and something behind these smiles in the chat. So I will just close my mouth for right now on that topic and say we're at 10 minutes over, which we generally tend to go always over with Bytemaster. So thank you for taking your time again and showing up here today to answer the community's questions and give us some updates. Thank the team, of course, and thank you to everyone who showed up. I'm going to link one more time here the spreadsheet, so you can go in and add your information into it for the brownies. Until we get a better system that's more automated, this is how I am going to be doing it. Thank you for your patience. You will receive your brownies, I assure you. And if you don't, it's because you didn't post anything on this spreadsheet, and I will continue bothering you on the forums about it and in Mumble Hangouts until you do. So thank you everybody for showing up.